All right.
Hey, Beady friends, it's Meredith from Beadalon and Artistic Wire. Oh my goodness, is anybody else having a day? I'm having a day, but it's a good day, and things are going to get even better in class today. Welcome to the Beadalon class in the Michaels Community Classroom. Like I said, I am Meredith from Beadalon and Artistic Wire, and I'm very excited. I'm always very excited. You guys know this already, but I am particularly excited about this project today because it incorporates so many of the basics when you are learning how to string jewelry, and everybody can use practice with the basics. Even me, I don't always do my crimps perfectly. I don't always wrap a loop perfectly. And so having a project like today's project that you can practice all of those things really helps keep your jewelry skills honed. The other thing I really like about the project that we're doing today is it uses up a lot of odds and ends. Now, we talk about how we're featuring the Pantone colors of the year, and indeed we are. However, this is a great project for using up last little bits of chain. Maybe you have a couple of pieces of wire from different projects, because the wire that we need for this is only 6 inches. And you might even be able to get away with a smaller piece. So it's a really good stash buster project, and it's actually a really good bead soup buster project, right? We all have that little bowl of beads on our beading area that's filled with what you find on the floor, or maybe you finish a project and you just have a couple of beads left over. So keep that in the back of your head. This does not necessarily have to be a go out and buy more beads project, although let's face it, we all want to go out and buy more beads for sure, me in particular. So I see some familiar names here. I see some new names here. So welcome everybody to class today. I appreciate it very much. And once again, as Lindsay had mentioned, if you are watching me live, please feel free in the chat to ask any questions that you might have. I will do my very best to both teach and see what questions are coming up. If you are watching on the replay, which you can do at the Michaels Community Classroom YouTube part of their YouTube channel, that is wonderful as well. We do our classes live on the Michaels site at 2 p.m. Eastern time on most Wednesdays. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Go ahead and take that overhead camera and we can start talking about the materials that we need for class today. So something is really funky with my lights today, but I think everybody can see everything pretty well. I don't know, weird shadows are coming in. I'm not 100% sure what's going on, but we are going to make the best of it. All right, so once again, let's take a good, nice close-up of our project that we're making today. We've got 3 strung pieces over here. And then we have, let's see, how many chains did I use? I used 4 pieces of chain over here on the other side. And this is one of my favorite designs to make for all of those reasons that I mentioned in the beginning, which are it's a good bead soup buster, it's a good stash buster. It uses up little scraps of sorry about that, friends. My husband is calling me. Let's reset the camera real quick. You would think that by now he would know that between 2 and 3 p.m. is not the right time to call me. Every time, right? Who else has those challenges? So I love the design of this too. So all of the things that I mentioned before, we're using beads, a few beads that we might have left from other projects, a little chain here and there, but it's also just a really pretty bracelet. And I'm going to try it on so you can see how it wears. I love that it's kind of 2 bracelets in one, right? You have the strung part here, but also the chain part. I don't know. I love the design. I love how it all comes together. And I hope that you all will love hanging out with me today while we make it. So yes, what I have over here let's start with the beads. Usually I end with the beads, but the beads are always the favorite part of everything. So let's start with the beads. Gonna move my little dangle dews out of the way. I pre-prepared a couple dangle dews for class today, just so that we wouldn't have to do too many. Okay, so I have here a little bead suit mix, right? I have just some of the gray color and some of the illuminating color in different textures, different shapes, different sizes. And I might decide, instead of doing each of my strands in a separate color, I might mix. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll see how I'm feeling. Because what I really want to do is impress upon everybody how versatile this bracelet is and how many different combinations you could possibly come up with for making this project. And it doesn't have to be limited to a bracelet, right? We could do this as a necklace. We could do it as an anklet. Lots and lots of possibilities. But we're going to go for the technical part first. And the first thing we're going to do is build. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up just a couple of steps. We're still, see, I always end with the beads. So I'm thinking to myself, I need to jump into actually teaching. We haven't gone over any of the other materials that we need yet. And there are a lot of them. But again, this is an easily substitutable project. If you don't have the exact items that are mentioned on the project sheet, no, do not fear. This is a lot of different things can go for this. But a couple of important things that we need after we go and we find all of our beads are, we are going to be using the 49 strand 0.018 satin silver beading wire. And I chose the satin silver. You can see I've used quite a bit of it, not for this project, but just in general, because it's that gray color, right? It's that perfect gray that goes with the Pantone color. So perfect gray. 018 is a great diameter that I really like using for making bracelets. And 49 strand, again, my favorite diameter or my favorite strand construction to use. And if some of these words that I'm using, talking about the diameter, talking about the strand construction, all of the different wires, if you're a little lost on all that, there is a great primer on all things bead stringing called 5 Things You Should Never Do While Making Beaded Jewelry. I highly recommend, after class today, going back and watching that on the Michael's YouTube channel. It covers everything from top to bottom that you need to know when you are beading, when you're making beaded jewelry. So 49 strand 018, and then I'm also going to be using number 2 size crimp tubes. And of course, the spool tells me right there which size crimp tubes that I need. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to guess about it. I'm going to be using the number 2 size crimp tubes from the variety pack. So let's see, what else do I need? Wire and crimps, of course. And while we're staying with crimping, I'm doing things in a little bit of a different order than I usually do, right? But one of the things that we are definitely going to need is, of course, our standard crimping tool. And we, in this project, have the opportunity to remember 6 separate times how to do our crimping properly. Okay, so we're going to go over that in class today. We also are going to need some chain. So I just grabbed some chain that I had over on the side or in a little baggie. I used 2 different sizes here, and I did actually, I have got to grab this bigger size chain as well, but just some chain, any chain that you have lying around. It just has to be a 3.5-inch piece. So I don't know about you guys, but I've got little pieces of chain left over from projects everywhere. So this is a great way to incorporate those into the project. So let's see, what else are we going to need? I used on my ends here some rings that came from a mix. It's the metals, or I'm sorry, which mix is it? Just looking on the list here of all of the different the different supplies. It's actually the first one mentioned on the list. It's the carved ring acrylic Rondelle beads, metal plated, and there are a whole bunch of different beads on that strand. But today I'm actually just going to substitute just two closed rings in, because really just because I don't have any more of this color. And we're talking about substituting materials, right? Maybe you don't have these exact rings. I would recommend using rings that are closed though, rather than open jump rings. And imagine I will circle back around and talk about that a little bit more as we start our making. So we are also going to need some head pins, right? Just regular old garden variety head pins. We're going to do our dangle do's with those. And some jump rings. I'm going to take my jump rings from my trusty Beadalon variety findings variety pack. You know, because I see a lot of familiar names. You know, I use this in almost all of my Michaels projects. It comes with lots of different sized rings and tags and lobster claws and all kinds of good stuff. For my clasp today, though, I'm going to use, and I know that I put it here, so it obviously got, oh, here we go. I'm going to use this. I'm actually not going to use the eye part. I'm going to just use the hook because that hook is going to hook right into the ring. So I don't even need to worry about the other part. Just a little fun design thing or a design element of the project. Okay, I'm sure that there are more things on our list of supplies, but I think it is time to jump right down into it and start our beading project. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we're going to cut 3 pieces of beading wire, and we're going to cut those 3 pieces of beading wire only 6 inches long, right? So small pieces. I probably have unfortunately tossed more beading wire that is 6 inches long than I need to, just because I'm not great at keeping little scraps around, although I really should be because I certainly make enough of them. Does it have to be exactly 6 inches? It could be maybe 5.5, maybe a little longer. 6 inches is kind of my spot for my sweet spot for being comfortable, having enough left over for comfortable crimping. TM, comfortable crimping. That's what we want. We want all of our crimping to be comfortable. Okay, so I have my 3 pieces of wire. I just used a nipper to do that. And with each of these wires, I'm going to crimp them onto one of the metal rings. Easy enough. So I'm going to take my crimp tubes and open them up. I like to just tap them out. And that's the easiest way not to get a big pile of crimp tubes. And let's see, I think we can go a little bit closer. We'll see how that works out for us. And I'm going to pick up a crimp tube. I'm going to come around that loop, back through that crimp tube, and I'm going to use my crimp tool. Now, again, I'm using 49 strand, 0.018 diameter. Put that up just a little bit so I have a little room. 0.018 diameter beading wire, which I have since put down and immediately lost. Does anybody else do that? Put things down and immediately lose them? So it's the 49 strand, 0.018 diameter beading wire. And of course, this is the best flexibility because it's 49 strand. I'm going to use my crimping pliers and just a really quick refresher on crimping, because can't we all use a quick refresher on crimping? There are 2 notches in the crimping plier. The back notch has a little nub that comes down that makes that back notch look like it's a crescent shape. And then the front notch, which is all rounded. Now, crimping is a 3-step process. First, and the step that many people do not do, but it is recommended by the inventor of the tool, is we're going to come in that front jaw and just gently press it down so our round tube is now an oval. And what that does is it makes it easier. Well, it makes it easier to do the second part, but it also makes it easier to keep these two wires from crossing. As much as you can, you want to eliminate the crossing of these wires in the crimp tube. So now I'm going to come down here and in the back notch, compress it down again. And now I have a nice crescent shape on my crimp. And now I'm coming into that front again and gently rounding it around. Now, for those of you who have taken my classes before and who have watched the 5 things you should never do while making beaded jewelry video, what am I going to say next about crimping? What am I going to beg and plead and cajole and make you promise not to do, even though you want to? Because you know you want to, right? We all want to. I'm going to show it. I'm going to show what not to do on this one. I'm going to go a little bit faster. So right in the front, then in the back. And sometimes when I put it in the back is when I like to separate these wires out, flatten it down. And then once again, watch how when I come back to the front of these jaws, I round this around. I don't just smush it down once and hope for the best. And I most certainly do not come up here and smush this down, because all that does is it breaks the wires, right? Crimping is a process, and we do this crimping on purpose this way so that we don't smush or smash the wire. And by doing proper crimping the proper way, without any smushing, but with not necessarily gentle, but with a rounding motion, that is what is going to make sure that our jewelry does not fall apart. Okay, so one last time. In the front, in the back, making sure those wires are not crossed, getting that smushed down, then coming back to the front and rounding it around. And please do not be frustrated if your crimping is not as perfect as you would like it to be. Proper crimping is, and of course at Beadalon, since we make the wire here in our factory in Pennsylvania, we are very cognizant of proper crimping. We talk about it a lot. It is very important to us. But it is oftentimes an overlooked part of making jewelry. So people really take for granted that, oh, you just crimp and you go. But it doesn't necessarily always happen that way. So what I'm doing right now is I'm starting with a smaller bead. Oftentimes when I am doing designing, and I actually didn't do it over here, curiously enough, and it worked out fine. And now that I'm looking at this, actually, I'm thinking that for my design, I'm going to change my mind and stick with this one size of bead. And look at what I did here. This is something that I try to do at the beginning, is tuck my tails into those beads. If the tail doesn't fit into your first bead, that's okay. You can just snip it off. But I like a tucking of the tail. It's like when Finn gets really scared about something and he tucks his tail. It's the same thing. We're going to tuck our beading wire tails into our beads, or are we? Yes, we are. Okay, so I am just going to string these up very quickly. I do like to do a little bit of a cooking show pre-string, but this is such a fast and easy project that I didn't think that it would be a problem. So for those of you who are watching live, it is very easy to turn the comments off on your screen. It is over in the settings. And in fact, I bet Lindsay would be able to send a message saying how to go about doing that, because when you are, when I'm teaching, it's actually very helpful for me to see questions and comments as I'm going along to make sure that I'm being clear and that I am answering everybody's questions as they have them. So I just need to go ahead and snip off another bit of beads here to keep on going. Keep on keeping on. So as I am stringing up, for those of us who are watching live, and see how sometimes this is popping out, I'm going to stop worrying about it and just attend to that in the end. So I want to make sure I have about 3.5 inches. So I need a couple more beads here. And you will get to know kind of how much extra you need here on the other end when you do your crimping. But that looks about right. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put a bead stopper on just on this strand. I'm going to put a bead stopper on the strand. I don't want to crimp this right away because I might have to judge my bead count a little bit, because I do want these 3 strands to be relatively mostly the same length, which is why I am varying the sizes of my beads, because I will need, I might need to take off or add a couple of the smaller beads. And it's great, let's put our example back in frame real quick, to use these big beads, because watch how quickly this particular strand will work up. Oftentimes I like to work in smaller beads, but I will say that larger beads can sometimes be a great asset as well. And I'm not so much worrying about my pattern today. Maybe if I was making this not for teaching, but for a boutique, I might be more particular about making sure that these grays are in a different pattern. But today I'm not going to worry about it too much. And I can actually use that same bead stopper just to hold that strand in place. Now we're going to go to our 3rd strand. And let's see, I use these really cool chips for my 3rd strand, these chips right here, but they are going to prove, and I know this for a fact, that they're going to be a little more difficult to string up in a timely manner. So I'm actually going to switch to these large rondelles, these 10mm rondelles, because the last thing I think anybody really wants to do is to watch me string up beads. I mean, we can make that happen. We can put together some TikTok videos of me stringing up beads if we want to see that. But I think it's much more fun to watch the technique and how it all comes together, rather than just the stringing. Okay, so now I'm going to tuck my tails in, because I need to get to the point in my project where I am going to make sure that everything is about the same length. Okay, so I think I can definitely add another one of these guys. And then I think that is probably going to be pretty good. I think so. All right, so let me go ahead and find where I left my crimp beads. And all we're going to do is we're going to crimp these 3, just like we did the 3 in the beginning. We're going to crimp these 3 to the other side of our bracelet. So generally, when we are crimping, and when we are crimping, especially beads that have flat sides, like these rondelles, what you want to do, of course, the first thing you want to do is get everything nice and tight, right? You want to make sure back here, see how my little tail slipped out. So one of my Achilles heels, I don't know, one of the things that always happens to me, these little tails always slip out. I haven't kind of found the right perfect way of getting them to stay in. Maybe paying better attention. I don't know. But I will often find that I have crimped something and I go back and my little tail is sticking out, even though I've tucked it in like 14 times. What I always mention and what I always recommend is to build in a little bit of wiggle room here in our design. Because if this is too tight, and it does not matter as much on this design, but if you string things too tight, it starts putting a lot of tension on the beads. So you always want to build in the opportunity to have your beads have movement. The reason why I went with the bigger beads and not the chips is just because I know it's going to take me a while to string those up. It's not hard to string them up. It's just going to be a little more time consuming. And I figured that it's probably better to watch the crimping and the attaching of everything rather than me stringing up chip beads. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to snip this off. And you guys can see this is actually something really interesting that happened. And I knew it was happening as I was doing it, but I wanted to finish everything off and then point out what happened. These beads have holes that are larger than the crimp tubes. Do you see that? So the bead is actually slipping over that crimp tube, which is good because it hides the crimp tube, but also not so great because we're going to have a little bit of extra wire showing in here. Now that does not bother me because I work for Beadalon, and Beadalon is the company that makes the wire. So I have a very important relationship with wire, but I do know that's not something that a lot of people like, right? We don't want to see the wire. So that is why, if you remember back to when I was putting smaller beads on the front and then similarly, I would put that on the side, that would alleviate that problem of having a little bit of extra wire showing when that bead slipped over the crimp tube. So just something to think about when you are doing your design. It's not always just about the aesthetics. Oftentimes it is very much about the construction. Okay, so actually need to switch that out. And once again, my tails are slipping out. Must be not my day for tails staying into my beads, but that's okay. No worries. And there are definitely different schools of thought on snipping tails versus tucking tails. If I am able to, I am a tail tucker. Hashtag tail tucker. But if, like I mentioned, if it doesn't fit, I'll just snip it off. Because it's really the crimp that is holding the wire, not necessarily anything else. All right, so let's see. It looks like when all is said and done, this one is going to end up being a little bit long. So I'm going to take 2 beads off and then let's see how that's going to look. It's going to be a little bit longer, but I like that. I'm okay. I'm good with that. If it was too shorter, it wouldn't. If it was too shorter, if it was shorter, would not work. And you can see very clearly why I waited then until I had strung all of the beads to do the crimping. All right, so now I'm going to come here and I put that crimp tube on, through, up, over, and around. And we know that the wire is going to fit back through these beads. So I'm going to go through 2. I'm going to grab my chain nose plier. I'm going to tighten that up. And it's really easy to over tighten. And I caution against it. It's one of those, it's just one of those things that comes sometimes with a lot of doing it, that you don't want to over tighten your wire. The beads will tell you, the wire will tell you if it feels forced and if everything feels crunchy, too tight, right? But if everything feels nice and secure, but not too tight, then that will also be a really good indication of how happy your beads are and how happy they will be in the long run. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do this last one, which I feel like it's going to give me a little bit of a challenge. So first things first, what I actually want to do is bring it around to the other side. I want those two thicker beads to be on either side of the smaller beads, because again, when I had mentioned thinking about the structure in addition to the design, it's just going to work better to have those beads separate, those larger beads separated a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to come in here and we'll do this last crimp nice and slow because this is our last one. And we want to make sure that it is on the outside of the small strand, but like it will get all tangled up. And it is not the end of the world. It really does not matter if, it doesn't even matter if these three are twisted or crossed, or maybe I crimped it in the wrong place. In the final analysis, when you wear this as a bracelet, A, no one is going to know, and B, it's not going to matter. Some things do matter and some things don't. And this is one of those things that will not matter. Okay, so once again, that 3-step crimping process. So I'm coming here in the front and I'm smushing it down. And again, it's not a death grip. It's just enough to get that circle into an oval shape. Just trying to make sure that we can all see together what I'm doing. And then we're going to come in the back and crunch it down in the back and then come back into the front. And I always go around a couple times. And last time, friends, never, never, never come in here and smush. Okay, just don't. Please don't. And then come in here and snip that off. All right, so we have our first side. It's a little bit random, right? It's a little bit like, okay, that's a little section of beads all together, but okay, let's keep going. Now we're going to build our second section, which is the chain section. And again, it doesn't matter what chain you use, what length of chain. I'm sorry, it does matter what length of chain you have, but it doesn't have to be long. It really only has to be about 3.5 inches. Now, I say 3.5 inches here and 3.5 inches here. If your wrist is a little bit larger, or you want a bracelet that's a little banglier, you might have to adjust your sizes, right? That's just how it is when we're making bracelets that aren't adjustable in and of themselves. But you want to be aware of that, right? And there's very easy ways of opening or of making things longer or shorter. But for this, we're just going to kind of stick with 3.5 because it's going to give us about a 7.5 inch bracelet in the final analysis. So let's see, I have my chain over here, and I am actually going to be using just this one size of chain just to demonstrate. I think. Yeah, I think. And I'm going to choose, and you can see like I have it already in a couple of different pieces. This is actually something that I put together for another project. It already has a clasp on it. So let's see if that piece is 3.5 inches. I can very easily repurpose that. Oh, it's perfect. Awesome. Well, that was a nice find, right? Sometimes we find things in our stash that are absolutely perfect, and it even already has a jump ring attached. So quick tip on getting your pieces of chain to be the same length. This is always how I cut my chain. I pick up the lengths. Let me bring the camera up so we can see what's happening here. So we're going to pick up the lengths on a head pin so that the lengths are the same Make sure your head pin is straight, of course. And then I just come down here and I snip at the same length. So now I have 2 pieces of chains that are the same number of lengths, and I don't have to worry about counting lengths, which is one of my least favorite things to do. I don't have to worry about making sure that everything is perfectly laid down for measuring out against my ruler. It's just a little cheat. So make sure your first link is the size that you want it to be, and then just pick them all up with the head pin. Make sure that they're hanging nice and straight. And sometimes you miss it. So it looks like one of my chains is 1 link short. So I'm going to actually take that one out and just cut another one. That'll be one for another project. Okay, so we're actually coming down the home stretch of this project, if you can believe it. There are a lot of different pieces, a lot of different parts, a lot of stuff out here on the bead mat, but not that difficult to construct once you know how it all comes together. So I have 2 flat nose pliers because of course I am opening and closing a jump ring. So I am using 2 flat nose pliers to do that. I'm going to open up this jump ring using a back and forth motion. So one comes toward me, one comes away from me. Of course, my chains are all still hanging out here on my head pin. Let's change that. And I'm just picking up with my head pin 1 link, or I guess the last link of each of these chains. Not a hard idea at all. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach that link to one of my rings over here. So I'm just going to link it in just like that. I'm going to take my pliers and close it up by wiggling it back and forth. You always want to do a little wiggle wiggle with your pliers when you're closing your jump rings to try to get them as nice and tight as possible. All right, so I've got 4 chains here, and you can see by using those thinner chains instead of these thick chains, what a difference that makes, right? Really, really different design. And by using chunkier beads over here, it changes the whole look of everything. But I think it's actually kind of cool to have such a difference in our design here today. You might disagree. You might want it to be a little bit more balanced. You might want it to be totally unbalanced. In fact, what could also be kind of neat is instead of doing all chain on this side and all beads on this side, do it, a couple of chains here, 1 bead strand here, right? Move that one over to that side. Just lots and lots and lots of different variations. But the construction is pretty much the same. What I'm doing here is I'm coming in and unsuccessfully, all right, now successfully, picking up each of those chain links or each of the ends of the chain links and putting them onto that jump ring. I feel like I have way too much going on and need to actually be able to see what's going on here. Let's try that. Okay, but easy enough. All I'm doing is I'm picking up the last link and putting it onto the jump ring. And I'm going to come back here and reverse the steps and close that down. Actually, I take that back. I am going to take this opportunity to attach my clasp. Okay, so I could have waited and done that later on, but why do it twice, right? I just want to take this opportunity, attach my clasp so I don't have to worry about it. I saw it. Sometimes I don't. And you can see that clasp is just going to clasp right into there. And sometimes what I'll do from when these come from the store, I'll give them a little squeeze with my thumb just to close that up a little bit. It's mostly secure once it's on your wrist, but I feel like that space when they come out of the package, it's a little too wide for my liking. So just something to think about. It's just something that I always do. I always try to make that just a little bit smaller as I before I wear it. All right, so I told you I was going to lose my dangle doos, but they're right here. So I made 3 dangle doos, and we're going to do dangle doos in 2 ways. So we're kind of doing a refresher of many of the classes that we have that we've done together. We did crimping, we did attaching chain, and now we are going to do both wrapped loops and simple loops and wrapped loops. So first, let's do a simple loop because that is actually what I did here for my examples, and then we'll do a wrapped loop as well. So you can decide which one you fancy. So for a simple loop, onto my head pin, I just put 2 beads. You could put any 2 beads, any 2 beads of your choosing. I wanted to, again, keep with the Pantone color theme. So I used the gray here and the yellow, or the illuminating color. But if you wanted to, you could incorporate yellow into this whole design, right? I just wanted a little pop of yellow. Maybe it was a cloudy, rainy day, the day that I made this bracelet, and I just needed a little pop of yellow. So when you do this a lot, it will be very obvious how long you need to cut this. But for starting out, between a half of an inch and a quarter of an inch, which I guess is about 3/8 of an inch, is about the perfect size for that tail to be. Because what you're now going to do is come here on the end in your round nose pliers and rotate your wrist, and see how I'm using small movements. I'm not doing one movement to move my wrist all the way back. And of course I under rotated. So I just need to come back in here and fix that guy and give him a little squeeze to make sure he's right. Okay, I'm going to do that a couple more times because we have a few more minutes before class is over to really go over in more detail our loops. But to attach this guy, we're just going to open it up just the same way that we did with the jump rings, right? Find a link that we like and close it up again. Okay. And I will do this several different times on these different lengths of chain without having much rhyme or reason to it. So let's try a bigger bead. Let's go gray on the bottom now and yellow on the top, just to show that you don't always need to have the smaller bead on the bottom and the bigger bead on the top. So first step is with my chain nose pliers. I'm going to bend this down at a 90-degree angle. Okay. And once again, that kind of 3/8 inch length is what you want to snip off and leave behind. And then come in here with those round nose pliers. And again, it's a movement. I'm gonna put my wrist in like this. Okay, it's not a movement like this. It's just a little movement like this. I promise if you do that little movement, your rings or your loops will be much, much happier, and you'll be much, much happier with your loops. And since I'm not paying quite as good attention as I should be, I keep under rotating my loops. But another thing to know is if you under rotate your loops, you can generally fix them. Okay, an under rotated loop or an over rotated loop is not cause for starting over always. Sometimes it is, but not always. All right, and I'm going to come in here and loop this on. Okay, so we did some simple loops, and I have some simple loops here. I'm just going to, these ones are a little bit bigger. If you want bigger loops, that is good as well. And again, no rhyme, no reason. I'm just attaching these randomly for fun little dangle doodads. Okay, so let's do really, really quickly a wrap loop, because these can be some people's challenging times as well. So let's see, let's try, we'll go gray on the bottom and then yellow on the top. And these ones are the same size. So again, we're varying everything. So for a wrap loop, you don't cut it first, okay? You leave the wire or the head pin as it is, and you hold on the top of the beads, okay, with no space in your round nose pliers. Now I'm going to use this black mark as my guide. Okay, now just a quick caveat, there are a bunch of different ways to do this, and your way might be a little bit different than my way, and that's okay, but this is how I do it, and how I'm able to get mostly consistent loops. All right, so with my thumb, I'm going to bend that wire over, so it is at a, this is always the hardest one to show, about a 45-degree angle. Okay, not holding it like that when I'm doing my loop though. And then what I want to do is change the direction of my pliers. So my pliers are currently horizontal. I want them to be vertical. So do you see how I did that? I went from horizontal to vertical. And I'm holding that wire again against that line. And with my pointer finger, I'm going to pull that wire around the top of the pliers. So now, it looks like this. Okay. So now what I do is I have, it's always like the hardest thing to show, but I have the wire around the top jaw of the pliers. I wanted to move my pliers so it's now in the bottom jaw of my pliers. Okay. So I went from the top jaw of my pliers to the bottom jaw of my pliers. Now I'm going to switch hands. So watch the plane of my tool. It is horizontal. I'm going to switch hands, and now it is vertical. And the wire is facing away from me. Now, a lot of people will do this part with their fingers, but I can never get a really nice wrap loop if I just use my fingers. So what I do is I take my chain nose pliers and I pull that side around toward me to form a 90-degree angle. Okay. And now, again, a lot of people do this part with their fingers, but I can't get a good loop with my fingers. So I use my tool and I push and I pull and I push and I pull until my wrap is up nice and flush to my bead. Okay. And sometimes I need to straighten that out, but I always straighten it with flat nose pliers, never straighten it with round nose pliers. And I'm going to come in here with my nipper and snip that as close as I can get it to that bead. And the last step is coming in here and tucking that tail in to make sure that everything is nice and neat. Okay. Now, of course, here's a loop, there's a loop. Well, what am I going to do about that? The easiest thing, let me see if this chain will do it for me, is to see if your chain is not soldered. Oftentimes chain links actually have breaks in them. Like these ones, for example, have breaks in them. So what you can do is actually open up those links and drop your wrapped loop into it. Okay. So pretty sweet, right? These ones don't look like they look like that they're soldered, which is nice because it makes for a little bit of a stronger chain, but it would mean that I would have to wrap that loop around the chain. And it would probably be easier to do that before I put everything together. So let's go ahead and show the simple loop and the wrap loop one more time. And then we're going to be done with our class for today. So fun. So let's do a simple loop first. I just put two beads on. I'm going to take the pliers, bend that down at a 90-degree angle, cut about 3/8 of an inch. And then of course, we're going to use our round nose pliers to come in here and with those small movements, turn that loop over. And sometimes you kind of have to come back and zhuzh it one way or another. Sometimes didn't quite go the way that you wanted it to. But for the most part, that technique will get you pretty good. And then just open it up, add it to one of the chains, and close it. So now if I wanted to do wrap loops, but I needed to attach it, let's do one like that. And then we will be on our way. All right, let's do it with this nice big gray bead, just for something different. So once again, we start with our round nose pliers and just hold that bead right at the top. Let's see how many times, if I can do this without hitting the camera so much. Okay. So I'm with my thumb, I'm going to bend that wire over at a 45-degree angle. My pliers are horizontal. I'm going to put them vertical. Then with my finger, I'm going to pull this around so it is all the way wrapped on that top jaw of the pliers. Now, it's on the top jaw of the pliers, but I need it to be on the bottom jaw of the pliers. And my pliers are in my dominant hand horizontally. I need them to be in my non-dominant hand vertically. Okay. And now once again, this part I don't do with my fingers. I come in here with my pliers and I pull that wire around toward me so that it's at a 45-degree angle. I'm sorry, not a 45-degree angle. You want it to be a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to go back to math class. And now I'm going to use a push and a pull to wrap this around. So I push it and I don't go around like this. A lot of people do, but again, I find, especially with a thicker head pin, the pushing and the pulling is what really helps to make a nice, tight wrap loop. You can see how slow I went too, right? And of course, I forgot to add it to the chain. I got so wrapped up, get it, in making my wrapped loop that I forgot to add it to the chain. But I think that in this case, using a little jump ring is going to be our best friend for attaching. Because really, why make our lives harder? Why make our beading harder? It's supposed to be enjoyable and fun, right? So jump rings are always our best friends when it comes to attaching things to things. So I'm just going to use a jump ring. I'm not going to worry about getting that guy attached because maybe I want to change him out later on and I don't want to have to cut the wire. I can just detach it using two pliers to undo the jump ring. Now let's see if I can get this bracelet on. I'm not going to be able to get it on in the camera with one hand, that's for sure. Yep. All right, we got it on. So this is the original that I made that has the dangle doos are a little bit more I took a little bit more care. And then this is the new one, which I'm also not going to be able to put on camera. So bear with me while I get this on, holding it against my belly. So just really fun. And even together, if you had them, so one was kind of here with the chain on that side, and then one is with the beads and the chain on the other side. You could even probably hook them together. I'm not sure that this is the right implement for that, but maybe, right? Maybe it works to put them together. So yeah, so super fun project. We did crimping, we did wire wrapping, we did a lot of talking about construction and putting things together. And I think, Lindsay, if you are still there and paying attention after all of that beading, it's time to take the overhead camera back again to say thank you to everybody. We have a lot of really fun projects on Beadalon's behalf coming up for the Michaels Community Classroom. So I hope that you will definitely hang out on the Michaels site and look for those classes. If you have made along with me today, or if you make this project afterwards, please go ahead and on your socials, post a photo and hashtag make it with Michaels, of course, but also please hashtag Beadalon, because we love to see what you make as well. Every time I see something on Facebook or on Instagram that's posted that has been inspired by something that I have taught, it makes my heart smile. So I really, really appreciate it when people do that. And of course, if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can find me at Meredith Joy Designs, and I love following people back. So go ahead and give me a follow, and I will check out your Instagram page as well. So 2:00 p.m. on Wednesdays Eastern time is generally where you will find the Beadalon classes for the Michaels Community Classroom. You can, of course, sometimes find our classes at 2 p.m. on Saturdays, where Sarah Lovecraft does projects for us as well. So be sure, as I mentioned, follow us on all of those socials, tag us, post your projects. And I think that's it for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you really like this project. I enjoyed having you in class. And until next time, happy beading.